Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Writer's Room. I'm here with Sue Bradford Edwards, and we're going to talk about writing for children. Sue?
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Sue Bradford Edwards. I'm a children's nonfiction author. I have over 600 sales, and all but 2 of them are nonfiction.
Okay.
So,
is that your preference, or is like fiction like not as, I don't know what I say, not, there are not as many markets maybe for fiction, or what?
there are more markets for nonfiction, definitely. And I know the last time I heard an editor or agent speak on this, they get more fiction than they get nonfiction. So it's a good way to break in. And I happen to like writing nonfiction, so it works out well for me. It's kind of a win-win.
Okay, so what's one of the pieces you've worked on recently that was nonfiction?
The most recent one that I can talk about, because when they're in development, they're confidential because they don't want their competition to scoop them. I worked on a book on classic rock and roll. I got to write a whole book on The Who.
And is that something you enjoyed?
I was thrilled.
That's good.
I was actually really happy not to get Queen, because as much as I love Queen, since the movie just came out, I didn't want to do that one.
Probably everyone thinks they're currently an expert on Freddie Mercury.
Pretty much, yeah. So I thought that was a good one to dodge.
All right. So what are been some of your favorite topics that you've gotten to write about then?
I think my all-time favorites were, of course, my first book, because that's always your darling, when I wrote about the ancient Maya, but also when I got to write about the evolution of mammals and the evolution of reptiles. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. And I know you've done some on like the hidden figures kind of people. Didn't you do a few of those?
I did one on hidden human computers, the women computers of NASA. I co-authored with Duchess Harris, and her grandmother was one of the computers. That's why she wanted to write the book, and she approached me.
Oh, cool. So are these things you normally get to choose, or are they assigned by the publisher? If you were someone out there who likes to do research and wanted to try to break in, would you just approach a publisher and say, I like these topics? Or do you just approach one and say, what topics have you got? Here's my credentials.
Definitely check the websites of individual publishers, and some of them will welcome pitches. They'll welcome proposals, and then you say, I would like to write on this topic. And a lot of the times they want a series, so be ready to hit the ground running, because if you pitch 4 books and they want it, they're going to want them pretty soon. But the way I do it, I work for Redline Editorial, and you submit a resume and some writing samples. You tell them what types of things you like to write about, and then they'll approach you and say, like when I did the ancient Maya, it was, we're doing a series on ancient cultures. Which one of these do you want to write about? And you get to, I think, and sometimes they approach me early on, so I get to pick out of the whole series which book I want to do most. Sometimes you're the last author they approach and you get no choices.
The one nobody wanted. Yeah.
Do you want to do this book? And actually, that's how I got Black Lives Matter, about the police violence issues with the African American community, and that's how I came to work with Duchess Harris. So
okay, so it was by being the last one on one series, it opened up something else too.
Right.
So how do you go about then researching things like that?
It depends on the topic. When I did the Black Lives Matter book, that one was so current. There were no books on the topic. So you're doing it all through news stories, journal articles, things like that. And it's the tricky part then is to find accurate information.
Hmm.
Because as you well know, the news isn't always super accurate.
Yeah, and sometimes books aren't either, so that's why I have to do a lot of research.
And this is true.
Yeah.
I found that out when I was researching The Who.
Yeah, and do you do a lot of try to contact people that are prominent in the field that you're researching as well to try to get some interviews or?
Sometimes I do, not always. In part, you just don't always have time.
Mm-hmm.
When they approach you with one of these books and you agree to do it, I do the research, turn in a first chapter and an outline. They come back with feedback, and then I finish the book, and that's all in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I approach somebody. I did that for the Dakota Access Pipeline book.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the times I'm doing it strictly based on research I can find, and sometimes the packager Redline will help put me in touch with somebody.
Okay. Yeah, I for one of the books I did, I think it was the one on Chad. I found somebody who'd been in the Peace Corps there,
Mm-hmm.
and had a direct quote from him on something he experienced. And then that was one of the things that the fact checker, the publisher, marked in the book. I couldn't find anything on that. It's like, well, I got it straight from the guy who lived there, so it's as much a fact, I guess, as I can make it. If it's so they let it go. But so sometimes you can find people who are more expert to talk to, but yeah, time is
Right.
often an issue. 6 weeks is probably a decent turnaround time, you think?
With the shorter books, it's not as tricky when you're doing something for fourth graders that's, 4,000 words. But when I do something like the evolution books or the book on the ancient Maya, those are 15,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, obviously it's doable for me. I've done 27 of them. But I have been told in no uncertain terms by my critique group that not everybody can write that fast.
Hmm.
So I need to quit acting like it's normal.
Well, everybody does write at a different speed. And also it depends on what you're writing. Some things write faster than others. So, but a deadline does help.
Well, a deadline, and if I have a plan, if I have that outline, I can get it done.
Mm-hmm.
If I was trying to do it without an outline, it'd be a completely different story.
Mm-hmm. So what advice did you have for people who think they want to write these kind of books? Besides contacting the publishers, which you already covered a little bit, but when you're actually doing the writing and doing the research, what kind of things do people need to keep in mind?
It helps especially when you're trying to break in, if you have a wide variety of interest, because I've written books on science topics, history, social science, and the broader your interest, the easier it's going to be to get an assignment. Mm-hmm. And I think that helps a lot when you're trying to break in.
Okay, but when you're actually writing, do you recommend to people that they try to write a certain amount per day or per week, or just keep that deadline in mind and write in order? Or is there any advice you have just on like the actual writing part of the nonfiction?
My advice is to go at it with a plan. And I can't tell you exactly how to do it because I don't know how you work. And I mean, I've got a friend who rewrote a book in the car driving to Utah from Missouri with her whole family, 8 kids in the car with her in the van. I couldn't do that, but for her it worked, so you do have to find what works for you. But I would definitely recommend to go at it with a plan because you are having to write it all fairly quickly. And if you let the deadline approach without having made any progress, you're going to put undue stress on yourself. And your family's not going to thank you for that because I've been told under the best of circumstances when the deadline approaches, everyone around me knows it. So you don't want to make your life any more stressful than it has to be.
Okay. So any other advice for people writing this? I know that there is something online that helps you know what kind of grade level you're writing at. How important is that?
That's vital for this type of writing. Most of these series that I write, well, all of them, are sold to school libraries. And they need to know this is a book for fourth graders, this is a book for sixth graders, and what's the reading level. And because they're in series, all the books in the series have to hit within the same range. And we use a reading test called ATOS, A-T-O-S, and you can find that online. I mean, that's how we do it. We go to the website, we plug in our text, and it tells us what the reading level is. And then I can write at a 7th to 8.5, 8.5 reading level with no effort. But if I'm having to write higher or lower, then I have to fiddle with it. And every reading test works differently. ATOS, it's numbers of words in a sentence, number of syllables in a word. So if you need to make it a lower reading level, pick simpler words, break up sentences. If you need to make it a higher reading level, hopefully that's when you're writing the evolution book and you get to use those Latin names for the different animals because that really helps your reading level go up. But you pick longer words, more syllables, and use longer sentences.
Okay, and you utilize a critique group?
For this stuff, I usually don't. In part, that's because a lot of this writing is confidential, and that's why, like, the book I'm working on now, I can't talk about. Because until it appears in their catalog or on Amazon, they don't want anybody to know what series they have coming up. Right. So, and that's a tough one for some people because they want to be able to run everything they write past somebody.
Of course, with these kind of books, generally there's going to be a fact checker at the publisher. I mean, they always did that to mine, so I'd get a whole list of things the fact checker wanted me to double check, or things they didn't agree with, or places where they had found alternate facts, you know.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. Because, well, as you know, not only do you have the fact checker, you have the expert consultant. And I have butted heads with the expert consultant before. And I have also worked with expert consultants who were a dream come true. When I did the book on the Zika virus, I could not have done that book without him because he was a virologist at a university and medical center. And he would get me articles that the general public didn't have access to yet and feed me information that I couldn't have found on my own. But yeah, you have to run it through a fact checker, and because of that, they want copies of articles that they're not going to be able to easily access. So the things I access through the library with one of their databases, I just save as a PDF file. Mm-hmm. So, you know, all my Wall Street Journal articles and New York Times, and when I'm doing the newspaper searches, I just save all of those as PDFs.
So if you have a 6-week turnaround time, about how much of that is research, how much of that is writing? Are you doing both at the same time?
I do about a week and a half of research, then do the outline in chapter 1, and then I do research as I write to help fill things in and add more detail.
Okay.
And also the series, I've worked on this series in the past. Special reports tend to be like headline news type items. That's what the Zika virus and the Dakota Access Pipeline were. And new information's coming out on that, you know, right up until the book is finished. So, yeah, you end up having to update things right before that book goes to press.
Right. Okay, any final thoughts on writing this particular kind of nonfiction?
No, just go into it with an open mind. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because I've worked with a lot of really great editors and they would rather answer your question and have you get it right the first time than have to ask you to make a change. But also remember to be flexible, especially if you're working on the leading edge of a new series. When I did the book on finance and saving money for junior high level, that was the first book in the series. The publisher had never done a book like it before. So they'd see part of the text and then go, you know, we don't think this is going to work like this. Can you make this change? So there were changes in what they wanted as we were working on the books.
Okay, and that's because basically they didn't know up front what they wanted. So they were kind of working it out as they went.
I think they were, really.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember, everybody on the team is trying to make the best book possible. And it really is a team effort. So that is something you have to be ready to work with, because I know not everyone changes their work really easily. For some people, it's absolute agony and, you know, much gnashing of teeth. And if that's the case, this may not be the right type of writing for you.
Okay, well, thanks for joining me for this episode of Writer's Room. And if you like this, hit like and subscribe. Maybe hit that bell notification button so you know when I put up more videos. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.